Naomi and Nia Carter, black twin sisters on a humble farm, carried dignity in every step of their morning chores. But the peace shattered when Chase Whitmore and his gang of bullies attacked Nia, cruel boys from powerful families who mocked their heritage and treated her like dirt. They believed she was nothing more than a weak farm girl, too timid to resist. What they didn't realize was that Naomi, her twin, was no victim. She was a ruthless Jiu Jitsu fighter, shaped by years of secret training. Chase and his gang thought they were untouchable, but their attack had set justice in motion, and vengeance was coming. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun painted long shadows across the Carter farm as roosters announced the dawn. Naomi and Nia moved through their daily routine, the metal feed buckets clanking against their legs as they walked. Their overalls were worn but clean, patched in places but worn with dignity. "Here, chickies," Nia called softly, scattering feed in wide arcs. The hens clucked and pecked around her feet, their feathers catching the early light. Despite the hard work, she smiled at their eager movements. Naomi worked alongside her sister, her movements more purposeful and quick. Her dark eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, a habit born from years of staying alert. The twins moved in perfect sync, knowing each other's rhythms after 17 years of sharing every moment. In the nearby field, Grandma Rose's silhouette stood strong against the horizon. Her weathered hands moved through the crops with practiced ease, checking leaves and testing soil. She hummed an old spiritual as she worked, the sound carrying faintly across the morning air. "Land's looking good this season," Naomi said, pride evident in her voice. Their small farm might not match the vast estates of their wealthy neighbors, but every inch was tended with love and determination. Nia nodded, brushing dirt from her knees. "The tomatoes are coming in real nice. Grandma's special fertilizer mix is working wonders." The peaceful moment shattered as voices carried from the road. Harsh laughter and the rumble of an expensive truck engine broke through the morning quiet. "Hey, farm trash!" Chase Whitmore's voice rang out, full of entitled mockery. "Still playing in the dirt?" Kyle Bennett's deeper voice joined in. "Look at that sad excuse for a farm." "My daddy says it's an embarrassment to the whole county." Naomi's hands tightened on her feed bucket, knuckles white against the metal. Her jaw clenched, and Nia could see the muscle working there as her twin fought to contain her anger. "Just ignore them," Nia whispered, touching her sister's arm. "They're not worth it." But Chase wasn't finished. "Better enjoy it while you can. Won't be long before this dump gets what's coming to it." Naomi took a step toward the road, but Grandma Rose's voice cut through the tension. "Girls, these beans need checking." The twins watched as the truck roared past, kicking up dust that settled on their freshly hung laundry. Chase's laughter faded into the distance, leaving behind a bitter taste in the air. "I hate them," Naomi muttered, her voice low and fierce, acting like they own everything just because their daddies have money. "Hate's a heavy thing to carry," Grandma Rose said, appearing beside them. Despite her age, she moved quietly, like a ghost through her beloved fields. Better to focus on what needs doing. The old woman's face was lined with years of similar confrontations, but her eyes remained bright and determined. She adjusted her worn sun hat and gestured to their morning tasks. They worked in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The chickens scratched contentedly, oblivious to the human drama around them. The morning dew dried slowly from the leaves as the sun climbed higher. "The summer squash is ready," Nia said finally, trying to lift the mood. "And those heritage tomatoes you planted, Grandma? They're beautiful." Grandma Rose nodded, satisfaction evident in her smile. Your grandfather would be proud. He always said this land had good bones, just needed the right kind of love. And the right kind of stubborn, Naomi added, managing a small smile despite her lingering anger. They continued their morning tasks, checking the irrigation lines, pulling weeds that dared to sprout overnight, and tending to their small but precious herd of goats. The farm might be modest compared to the sprawling operations around them, but it was theirs, paid for with generations of sweat and determination. As the morning wore on, Nia began gathering vegetables for their regular deliveries to local customers. She selected each piece carefully, arranging them in her grandmother's old delivery basket. Firm tomatoes, crisp lettuce, tender squash, and fragrant herbs. These will make Mrs. Johnson happy, she said, holding up a particularly perfect tomato. She's been waiting for them to come in. Just be quick about the deliveries today, Grandma Rose said, her voice carrying a note of concern that she tried to hide behind practical advice. Heat's coming up strong. Naomi watched her sister prepare the basket, her protective instincts warring with the need to finish her own chores. The morning's confrontation had left her uneasy, but she pushed down her worry. They couldn't let bullies like Chase and Kyle control their lives with fear. Nia hummed softly as she worked, carefully wrapping each bundle of herbs in damp paper to keep them fresh. Her gentle nature showed in how she handled each vegetable, treating their produce with the same care she wished the world would show to their family. The afternoon sun hung heavy in the Georgia sky as Nia made her way back to the barn, her delivery basket lighter after a day of dropping off produce. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and she paused to wipe it away with her sleeve. The old barn's weathered walls offered a promise of shade, and she headed toward it, looking forward to getting out of the heat. The crunch of gravel made her freeze. Through the thick summer air came the sound of multiple footsteps and low laughter. Her heart started hammering before she even turned around. "Well, look who we found!" Chase Whitmore's voice dripped with mock sweetness. "The delivery girl." Nia clutched her basket tighter as Chase, Kyle, Travis, and Ethan emerged from behind the barn. They moved like wolves circling prey, spreading out to cut off her escape routes. The familiar taste of fear filled her mouth. I need to get back to work," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She took a step backward, but the barn wall was already at her shoulders. "You need to learn something first," Chase said, closing the distance between them in 2 quick strides. His hand shot out, grabbing a fistful of her shirt. The fabric twisted in his grip as he yanked her forward. "About knowing your place." His face was inches from hers now, eyes bright with cruel enjoyment. "You think you're so special with your organic vegetables and your fancy customers?" He slammed her back against the barn wall. The rough wood scraped through her shirt. "You're nothing but dirty farm trash." Kyle's massive form loomed beside Chase. With a savage grin, he knocked the basket from Nia's hands. The remaining vegetables scattered across the dirt, tomatoes bursting like wounds against the ground. "Oops," he laughed. "Guess nobody's getting their delivery today." "Get your phone out," Travis called to Ethan. "You'll want to record this." Ethan fumbled with his smartphone, nervous energy making his hands shake. But he was grinning too, caught up in the mob mentality of the moment. The camera's lens gleamed in the sunlight as he pointed it at Nia. "Please," Nia whispered. "Just let me go." Chase's response was to shove her harder against the wall. The racial slur he spat made her flinch more than the physical pain. "Shut your mouth. You people need to learn you don't belong here." Travis circled around to her side, his thin face alive with anticipation. "Maybe we should teach her that lesson real good this time." Without warning, his foot shot out, catching Nia in the ribs. The impact drove the air from her lungs. She would have doubled over if Chase hadn't been holding her up. "Again," Chase commanded, and Travis obliged. Each kick sent waves of agony through Nia's body. She tried to protect herself, but Chase kept her pinned. Tears streamed down her face as Travis landed blow after blow. "Make sure you get this," Kyle called to Ethan, who adjusted his camera angle with shaking hands. "This is going to look great online," Ethan said, his laugh high and nervous. The phone's screen captured every moment of Nia's torment. The assault felt endless. When Chase finally released her shirt, Nia crumpled to the ground beside her ruined vegetables. Dirt and bruises covered her clothes, and every breath sent sharp pains through her ribs. Chase crouched down beside her, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Tell your family something for me. This land belongs to real Americans. The sooner you understand that, the better." "Got it all?" Travis asked Ethan, who nodded eagerly, stopping the recording. "Every second," Ethan confirmed, pocketing his phone. His earlier nervousness was replaced with cruel pride. Kyle delivered one final kick to the scattered vegetables. "Thanks for the entertainment, farm girl." Their laughter echoed off the barn walls as they walked away, leaving Nia curled up in the dirt. The sun beat down mercilessly as she tried to catch her breath through the pain. Each sob sent fresh waves of agony through her battered ribs. Time blurred. She wasn't sure how long she lay there before familiar footsteps approached at a run. "Nia!" Naomi's voice cracked with horror. "Oh, God, Nia!" Strong hands gently helped her sit up. Through tear-blurred eyes, Nia saw her sister's face transform from shock to rage. Naomi's hands trembled as they brushed dirt from Nia's face. "Who did this?" Naomi's voice was deadly quiet. "Tell me who did this to you." Nia could only shake her head, sobs racking her body. The pain from her ribs made it hard to speak. Around them, the ruined vegetables lay like casualties in the afternoon sun. Naomi pulled her sister close, careful of her injuries. But beneath the gentleness of her touch, Nia could feel the fury radiating from her twin's body. It rolled off her in waves, as palpable as the summer heat. They stayed like that, Nia weeping into her sister's shoulder, while Naomi's rage simmered in silence. The barn's shadow grew longer as the sun began its descent, marking the end of a day that would change everything. Inside the farmhouse, darkness pressed against the windows like a living thing. The old oil lamp on the side table cast flickering shadows across the worn furniture, making the room feel smaller than it was. The familiar scent of chamomile tea and healing salve filled the air. Nia lay stretched out on their grandmother's faded floral couch, her face swollen and mottled with bruises. Each breath came with a slight whimper that made Naomi's heart twist. Grandma Rose sat beside her, methodically dabbing at cuts and scrapes with a warm cloth. Her weathered hands moved with practiced gentleness, but her eyes held a storm of their own. "Easy now, baby," Grandma Rose murmured as Nia flinched. "We need to clean these proper." She wrung out the cloth in a bowl of warm water, the liquid now tinged pink with blood. Naomi couldn't stay still. She paced the length of their small living room, her work boots striking the wooden floor, in a rhythm that matched her racing heart. Her fists clenched and unclenched at her sides, knuckles white with restraint. The fury inside her felt like a living thing, clawing at her chest, demanding release. "They filmed it," Nia whispered, her voice rough from crying. "Ethan recorded everything on his phone. They're probably laughing about it right now." The lamp flame jumped as Naomi spun around, her sudden movement stirring the air. "Those cowards," she spat. 4 against 1. They're nothing but filthy cowards. "Naomi," Grandma Rose's voice carried a warning. "Mind that temper." But Naomi couldn't stop moving. The walls felt too close, the air too thick. Years of memories crashed through her mind like a brutal slideshow. Chase and his friends throwing rocks at their chickens when they were 12. Kyle crushing their vegetable stand under his truck tires last summer. Teachers looking the other way when the boys accidentally knocked Nia's books into the mud. Remember when Daddy told us to be proud of this land? Naomi's voice cracked. He said it was bought with our great-grandparents' blood and sweat. Said no one could take it from us if we stood strong. Nia tried to sit up, wincing. Naomi, please. And now look. Naomi's hand swept through the air. They beat you half to death right here on our own property. They filmed it like it was some kind of game. Grandma Rose dipped the cloth back in the water, her movements deliberate. Your daddy also said anger can blind you if you let it, make you forget what's important. What's important is that they pay for this. Naomi stopped pacing, her shadow tall against the wall. She knelt beside the couch, taking Nia's hand carefully in hers. Listen to me, sister. This will never happen again. I swear it on everything we are. Nia's fingers trembled in her grip. You can't fight the whole world, Naomi. Watch me. The words came out like steel. One way or another, they're going to learn they can't treat us like this. Not anymore. The lamp flame wavered, sending shadows dancing across Naomi's face. In that moment, she looked so much like their father that Grandma Rose had to look away. I've watched you girls face things no child should have to face, Grandma Rose said softly. Watched you grow strong despite it all. But strength isn't just about fighting back, Naomi. It's about knowing how to fight smart. I'm done being smart, Naomi replied, her voice shaking with controlled fury. I'm done turning the other cheek. They crossed a line today, and they need to understand there are consequences. The old clock on the wall ticked heavily in the silence that followed. Outside, cicadas sang their evening chorus, oblivious to the tension within the farmhouse walls. Later that night, Naomi stood alone in her small bedroom, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The glass had split years ago, when Kyle threw a baseball through their window by accident. The fracture divided her face into segments, making her look like a stranger to herself. With steady hands, she gathered her thick hair back from her face. Each movement was precise, purposeful. The rubber band snapped tight around the ponytail, pulling her features taut. Her dark eyes met their own reflection, and she barely recognized the coldness she saw there. Tomorrow, she whispered to her fractured image, I teach them a lesson. The words hung in the still air of her bedroom, heavy with promise. Through the thin walls, she could hear Nia's muffled sobs from the next room. Each cry fed the fire burning in Naomi's chest, transforming her rage into something harder, more focused. The mirror caught the moonlight streaming through her window, making the cracks glow like silver veins. In its broken surface, Naomi saw herself not as the farmer's daughter or the quiet twin, but as something new, an instrument of justice, honed by years of suffering and finally ready to strike. Dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as Naomi stepped onto the narrow dirt path that wound through their property. She'd chosen Nia's pale blue work shirt carefully, the one with tiny flowers embroidered on the collar. Her shoulders hunched forward in a perfect imitation of her sister's shy posture, hands clasped nervously in front of her. The morning air felt thick with moisture, promising another scorching Georgia day. Chickens scratched in the yard behind her, their clucking a familiar soundtrack to farm life. She moved slowly, deliberately, making sure to drag her feet the way Nia did when she was anxious. Every few steps, Naomi glanced over her shoulder, playing up the nervousness. She knew they'd come. Chase and his gang always showed up early, before the heat of the day set in, when they thought no adults would be watching. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but not from fear, from anticipation. The sound of an engine growling down the road made her jump, exactly as Nia would have. Chase's pickup truck appeared around the bend, mud-splattered and too loud for the peaceful morning. Music blasted from the speakers, some country song about dirt roads and freedom that made Naomi's teeth clench. She kept walking, head down, counting their footsteps as they approached. 4 sets of boots crunching on gravel, right on schedule. "Well, look who's stupid enough to be out here all alone again." Chase's voice carried across the field, dripping with mock surprise. "Didn't you learn your lesson yesterday, farm trash?" Naomi hunched her shoulders further, shuffling faster like a frightened animal. Behind her, she heard Kyle's deep laugh, followed by the distinctive click of Ethan's phone camera turning on. "Hey!" Chase shouted. "I'm talking to you, girl." Heavy footsteps approached quickly. Naomi fought every instinct that screamed at her to turn and fight. Instead, she let Chase grab her shoulder, spinning her around roughly. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," he snarled, his face inches from hers. His breath smelled like stale cigarettes and the coffee he probably stole from his daddy's kitchen. Naomi kept her eyes down, letting her lower lip tremble. She could see Kyle and Travis flanking Chase, their shadows stretching long across the dirt path. Ethan hung back, phone held high, already recording. "Maybe she needs another reminder about respect," Kyle suggested, cracking his knuckles. His varsity football jacket stretched tight across his shoulders, a symbol of the privilege that made him feel untouchable. Chase's fingers dug into her arm. "You know what? I think you're right." He shoved her backward, making her stumble. "Seems like yesterday's lesson didn't stick." "Please," Naomi whispered, using Nia's soft voice. "Just let me go." That made them laugh harder. Travis, who'd been quiet until now, stepped forward to give her a sharp poke in the ribs, right where they'd kicked Nia yesterday. "Your sister around?" he asked, looking toward the farmhouse. "Maybe she'd like to join the fun this time." Naomi let a whimper escape, feeding their cruel excitement. She could see Ethan adjusting his camera angle, making sure to catch every moment of what they thought would be another easy victory. "Got nothing smart to say today?" Chase taunted, circling her like a shark. "No big sister to hide behind." Kyle moved faster than his size suggested, shoving Naomi hard from behind. She let herself fall, landing face first in the mud. The impact split her lip against her teeth, and she tasted blood. "Look at that!" Kyle hooted. "She's already crying." Naomi stayed down, shoulders shaking as if with sobs. Mud seeped through Nia's shirt, cold against her skin. She felt boots surround her, heard the click of Ethan's phone getting a closer shot. "Not so proud now, are you?" Chase's voice came from above. "This is what happens when you forget your place." Someone spat, the glob landing inches from her face. Naomi pressed her forehead into the dirt, letting red drops from her split lip fall onto the mud. Her hands clenched in the soil, but she forced them to relax. Not yet. Let them get closer. Let them think they'd broken her completely. "Maybe we should help her up," Travis suggested with fake concern. "You know, show her how nice we can be." "Yeah," Chase agreed, and Naomi could hear the cruel smile in his voice. "Let's show her some real Southern hospitality." The 4 boys laughed, the sound echoing across the empty field. Naomi stayed perfectly still in the mud, coughing weakly, letting her bloody lip tremble. Every muscle in her body itched to spring up, to fight back, but she held herself in check. Just a little longer. Let them lean in closer, confident in their power over what they thought was a helpless girl. Through her mud-streaked hair, she watched their boots shift closer, surrounding her completely. Above her, Ethan adjusted his grip on the phone, determined to capture every second of their supposed triumph. Chase grabbed Naomi's chin roughly, forcing her face up from the mud. His fingers dug into her cheeks as he sneered down at her. "You're weak, just like your people. Always have been. Always will be." Naomi's muscles coiled tight as a spring. She rose slowly, mud dripping from her clothes, and spat a mouthful of blood onto Chase's pristine white sneakers. Her voice came out as a low growl that none of them had ever heard before. "You really shouldn't have done that." The change in her demeanor was instant. Gone was Nia's timid posture, replaced by something dangerous and controlled. Her eyes, no longer downcast, blazed with cold fury. The transformation made them hesitate, confusion flickering across their faces. Kyle recovered first, his massive frame launching forward with a roar. "You little—" Naomi moved like lightning. She stepped into his charge, gripped his extended arm, and used his own momentum to send him flying. Kyle's feet left the ground completely. He crashed onto his back with a heavy thud that knocked every bit of air from his lungs. He lay there gasping like a beached fish, eyes wide with shock. "What the hell?" Travis scrambled backward, grabbing a loose fence board from the ground. He swung it wild and clumsy, but Naomi was already moving. She ducked under the board easily, stepped inside his guard, and trapped his arm against her body. With one smooth motion, she twisted and drove her hip into him. Travis yelped as his feet left the ground. He landed hard on his shoulder, the board clattering away. Before he could move, Naomi had him pinned, one arm locked behind his back at a painful angle. "Stay down," she commanded, voice cold as winter steel. Travis whimpered and nodded frantically. Chase's face had gone from confusion to rage. He charged forward with a wordless scream, fists swinging. But Naomi had been waiting for this moment. She released Travis and flowed around Chase's wild punch like water. Her hands found his arm, guiding it past her as she pivoted. In one fluid motion, she dropped to the ground, pulling Chase with her. His arm extended across her hips as she locked her legs over his chest. Years of training took over as she arched her back, applying precise pressure to the elbow joint. Chase's scream cut through the morning air as his wrist snapped with a sound like a green branch breaking. He rolled away, clutching his arm, high-pitched whimpers escaping through clenched teeth. The only sound now was Kyle's desperate gasping and Chase's pained whines. Travis stayed frozen where he'd fallen, too terrified to move. Ethan stood rooted to the spot, his phone slipping from nerveless fingers to clatter in the dirt. His face had gone ghost white as he stared at Naomi. She rose slowly to her feet, mud and blood streaking her clothes. Nothing about her resembled Nia now. Her stance was balanced and predatory, hands loose at her sides but ready to strike. When she spoke, her voice carried across the suddenly silent field. "You touch my sister again." She took one step forward, making them all flinch. "You come near our farm again." Another step. "And you'll either crawl out of here." Her eyes locked onto each of them in turn, burning with promised violence. "Or I'll bury you here." The threat hung in the air like summer lightning. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Kyle managed to roll onto his hands and knees, sucking in ragged breaths. Travis scrambled backward like a crab, eyes never leaving Naomi. Chase cradled his broken wrist, tears streaming down his face. Ethan was the first to run, abandoning his phone in the dirt. The others followed in a stumbling rush, supporting Chase as they fled. Their boots kicked up dust as they raced for the truck, all previous bravado shattered. Naomi watched them go, standing tall in the morning sun. Her split lip throbbed, and bruises were already forming where they'd struck her, but satisfaction burned bright in her chest. Behind her, the chickens had resumed their peaceful clucking, as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. The engine of Chase's truck roared to life. Tires spun in the gravel as they peeled away, leaving only a cloud of dust and Ethan's abandoned phone as evidence they'd been there at all. The phone still recorded, its lens capturing nothing now but the sky and the silent aftermath of justice served. Naomi felt her hands trembling, not from fear but from the release of tension. Every move she'd made had been precise, each technique perfectly executed, just as she'd practiced countless times in secret. Years of training, hidden from everyone except her grandmother, had finally served their purpose. She stretched her shoulders, feeling muscles burn from the exertion. The taste of blood was still sharp in her mouth, but it tasted like victory now. Around her, the farm seemed to exhale, as if the land itself approved of what had just happened. The sun was setting behind the Carter farmhouse, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, holding a cold cloth to her swollen lip, while Nia carefully picked bits of dried mud from her sister's hair. Grandma Rose stirred a pot of stew on the old stove, the familiar scent of comfort food filling the warm kitchen. "You did what needed doing," Grandma Rose said quietly, not turning around. "Just like your daddy would have." The crunch of tires on gravel made them all freeze. Through the window, they could see two deputy cruisers rolling up the dirt driveway, their headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Behind them, a glossy black truck followed, Mr. Whitmore's vehicle, impossible to mistake. "Stay calm," Grandma Rose commanded, wiping her hands on her apron. "Let me do the talking." Heavy boots stomped up the porch steps. The knock that followed was more like a punch against the wooden door. Grandma Rose opened it to find Deputies Miller and Hayes standing there, their faces set in stern masks. "Evening, Mrs. Carter," Deputy Miller said, not quite meeting her eyes. "We've got some business to discuss." "Then discuss it," Grandma Rose replied, her voice level but cold as January frost. Deputy Hayes thrust a stack of papers forward. "We've received multiple complaints about a violent assault on your property today. Witnesses say your granddaughter Naomi attacked 4 boys without provocation, causing serious injury." Behind them, Mr. Whitmore emerged from his truck, his expensive boots crunching on gravel as he approached. He stood back, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with obvious satisfaction. "That's not what happened," Nia started to say, but Grandma Rose held up a hand to silence her. "Those boys have been harassing my girls for months," Grandma Rose said. "They beat my granddaughter Nia yesterday, left her bloody and bruised." "Where were you then?" Deputy Miller shifted uncomfortably. "No report was filed." "Because we know you wouldn't do anything about it," Naomi cut in, standing up from the table. "Just like you never do." "Watch your tone, girl," Deputy Hayes warned. He pulled out another set of papers. "We've also received notice of multiple zoning violations on this property. Improper fence placement, unauthorized structure modifications, failure to maintain proper drainage systems." The list went on, each violation more ridiculous than the last. Naomi's hands clenched into fists as she recognized the game being played. This wasn't about justice. It was about power. Mr. Whitmore finally stepped forward, his expensive suit out of place in the farmhouse doorway. "Now, Rose," he said, his voice dripping false concern. "You know this kind of behavior can't go unchecked. Those boys come from good families. One of them has a broken wrist. Might affect his college baseball scholarship." "Should have thought about that before they came looking for trouble," Grandma Rose replied. Mr. Whitmore's smile never reached his eyes. "This land's been nothing but trouble since your family got hold of it. Might be time to consider selling. I could make you a fair offer. Enough to move somewhere more suitable." The insult hung in the air like poison. Naomi took a step forward, but Nia caught her arm, holding her back. "We're not going anywhere," Grandma Rose said firmly. "This land is ours, paid for in full with 40 years of sweat and sacrifice." Mr. Whitmore's smile turned cold. "Your kind never wins, Rose. You ought to know that by now. The sooner you accept it, the easier things will be." He nodded to the deputies, who left the stack of papers on the kitchen table. As they turned to leave, Deputy Hayes added, "We'll be watching this property closely. Any more incidents, and there will be arrests. The screen door slammed behind them. Through the window, they watched the vehicles pull away, their taillights disappearing into the growing darkness. For a long moment, nobody moved. Finally, Grandma Rose picked up the stack of notices. Her hands trembled slightly as she read through them, her expression growing darker with each page. The kitchen was silent except for the soft bubbling of the forgotten stew. With sudden force, she slammed the papers down on the table, making both girls jump. 40 years, she said, her voice tight with anger. 40 years we've worked this land. Your grandfather cleared it with his own hands. Your daddy was born in this very house. She looked at her granddaughters, steel in her gaze. And now they think they can chase us off with paper threats and false charges. She smoothed the crumpled notices with trembling fingers. This is just the beginning, girls. They won't stop here. They'll keep coming, keep pushing, keep trying to break us down. That's how they've always done it. The kitchen fell silent again, broken only by the soft tick of the old clock on the wall and the distant song of crickets. Through the window, their land stretched out into the darkness. The fields their family had worked for generations, the barn their grandfather had built, the trees their father had climbed as a boy. Everything they were, everything they had fought to keep, was now under threat. The morning sun beat down on Main Street as Naomi and Nia walked toward Hartwell High School. Their shoes clicked against the cracked sidewalk, echoing off the old brick buildings that lined both sides of the street. Every few steps, Naomi noticed people staring, whispering behind their hands. Outside Thompson's grocery, Mrs. Jenkins and her friend huddled near the produce display, their voices carrying clearly across the morning air. Those Carter girls were always trouble, Mrs. Jenkins said, shaking her head. Violence never solved anything. Her friend nodded vigorously. Did you hear what she did to poor Chase? His mama says he might lose his scholarship. Nia's shoulders hunched forward, but Naomi walked taller, her chin lifted. As they passed Miller's hardware store, old Mr. Miller actually tipped his hat to them, something he'd never done before. Inside the diner, they could see through the large window as Tommy Chen's father gripped his son's shoulder, pointing at Naomi with something like pride in his eyes. The Chens had faced their own share of harassment from Chase's crowd. "Look at them all," Nia whispered, "talking about us like we're characters in some story." "Let them talk," Naomi replied, but her voice wavered slightly. The weight of all those eyes felt heavier than any punch she'd taken. As they approached the school, the whispers grew louder, more direct. A group of white students near the flagpole stepped back as they passed, like Naomi was some kind of dangerous animal. But Marcus Washington and his friends, who usually kept their distance, gave her subtle nods of respect. "Heard you gave those boys exactly what they deserved," an elderly black man called from his porch, his voice carrying across the street. "About time somebody did." Inside the school hallway, the divide was even more apparent. Students clustered in tight groups, conversations dying as the sisters passed. Some looked afraid, others admiring, but nobody seemed neutral anymore. "Thug," someone coughed into their hand as Naomi passed. "Hero," another whispered from behind a locker door. Nia grabbed Naomi's arm. "Maybe we should have stayed home today. And let them think they scared us away?" Naomi shook her head. "No chance." They headed toward their first class, English with Mrs. Delgado. The teacher stood at her door as always, greeting students. When she saw the Carter twins, something flickered in her eyes, concern mixed with determination. "Girls," she said quietly, "could you stay after class? I need to discuss your essays." During class, Mrs. Delgado taught as usual, but Naomi caught her glancing their way more than usual. When the bell rang and other students filed out, she closed the door and pulled down the shade. "I heard what happened," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Both times. The attack on Nia and what followed. Naomi tensed, ready for another lecture about violence not being the answer. But Mrs. Delgado surprised her by pulling a thick manila folder from her desk drawer. Those boys, Chase, Kyle, and their friends, they've been bullying students for years, she said, placing the folder on Naomi's desk. I've documented every incident I've witnessed or had reported to me. Dates, times, witnesses. The school board has ignored every complaint. Naomi's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were dozens of handwritten accounts, emails, even photographs of injuries and vandalism. Names she recognized, students who'd suddenly transferred or dropped out. "Why are you showing us this?" Nia asked. Mrs. Delgado's eyes darted to the door before she answered. "Because I'm tired of watching good kids get hurt while those boys face no consequences. Because I remember what it was like being the daughter of immigrants, having people tell my family we didn't belong." She took a deep breath. "And because what they're doing to your family now, twisting the truth, using their power to punish you for standing up, it has to stop." Naomi leafed through the pages, her throat tight. Here was proof, real, documented proof, of years of systematic bullying and cover-ups. "This could get you in trouble," she said. Mrs. Delgado straightened her spine. "Some things are worth the risk. Just—" She hesitated. "Be careful how you use it. Those families have a lot of influence in this town." The warning bell rang, making them all jump. Mrs. Delgado quickly wrote them passes for their next class. As they left the classroom, Naomi clutched the folder tight against her chest, its weight somehow both heavy and uplifting. The hallway had cleared, their footsteps echoing off the rows of lockers. "We fight with more than fists now," Naomi whispered, her fingers tracing the edge of the folder that contained their new weapon, the truth. The evening sun painted long shadows through the damaged walls of the old barn. Naomi had dragged 3 scarecrows from the cornfield, propping them up against bales of hay. She'd stuffed old feed bags with straw to make them firmer, more like practice dummies. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she executed a perfect hip throw on the middle dummy. The scarecrow crashed to the dirt floor with a satisfying thud. Her muscles burned from repeating the same moves over and over, but she wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. The creak of the barn door made her spin around, hands automatically rising into a defensive stance. But it was just Nia, holding 2 mason jars of ice water. "Grandma Rose sent these," Nia said softly, setting one jar on a wooden crate. She watched as Naomi attacked the dummy again, this time with a swift leg sweep. How long have you been practicing out here?" "Few hours." Naomi wiped her face with her shirt sleeve. "Need to stay sharp." Nia picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. Would you, maybe—" She took a deep breath. "Could you show me some of that?" Naomi stopped mid-strike, turning to study her sister's face. "You sure?" Nia nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I don't want to feel helpless anymore." Something squeezed in Naomi's chest. Pride mixed with lingering anger at why her gentle sister felt this need. She took a long drink of water, then gestured Nia closer. "Okay, first thing, stance is everything." Naomi demonstrated a basic defensive position. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent. You want to feel grounded, like your feet are growing roots into the earth. Nia tried to copy the stance, wobbling slightly. Naomi moved behind her, gently adjusting her shoulders and hips. "There. Now, if someone grabs your wrist like this..." Naomi demonstrated a common hold. You don't try to pull away. Instead, you step in. Yes, just like that. And turn your body like this. They practiced the simple escape over and over. At first, Nia's movements were hesitant, uncertain. But gradually, she began to flow more naturally through the motion. "That's it." Naomi grinned as Nia successfully broke her grip for the third time in a row. "You're getting it!" A smile flickered across Nia's face. Small, but real. They moved on to other basic techniques. How to fall safely, how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to break free from different holds. "Remember," Naomi explained, demonstrating a simple arm lock, "it's not about being stronger. It's about using their energy against them. Like when the wind bends a tree instead of breaking it." Nia's eyes lit up at the comparison. "Like the willows by the creek." "Exactly." Naomi helped her sister practice the movement slowly. "Be the willow." As the sun sank lower, casting orange light through the barn's broken boards, they continued working. Nia wasn't naturally aggressive like Naomi, but she had good instincts and learned quickly. When she successfully executed a basic hip throw on one of the dummies, her surprised laugh echoed through the barn. "I did it!" Nia clapped her hands, then immediately looked embarrassed by her outburst. "Do it again," Naomi encouraged, feeling her heart lift at the sound of her sister's laughter. Something she hadn't heard since the attack. Nia's second throw wasn't as clean, sending her stumbling into a pile of hay. Instead of getting frustrated, she burst into giggles. Naomi couldn't help joining in, and soon both sisters were laughing so hard they had to sit down. "Your face when you fell," Naomi wheezed, clutching her sides. "You should see your hair." Nia pointed at Naomi's head, where pieces of straw stuck out at odd angles. They collapsed back into the hay, their laughter slowly fading into comfortable silence. The barn's familiar scents surrounded them: sweet hay, old wood, the lingering warmth of summer earth. Through the holes in the roof, the first stars were becoming visible in the darkening sky. "Thank you," Nia said quietly, reaching for her sister's hand. Naomi squeezed back. "For what?" "For being strong when I couldn't be. For teaching me to be stronger." "You've always been strong, Nia." Naomi turned her head to look at her twin. "Just in a different way than me." They lay there in comfortable silence, their breathing synchronized like when they were little girls sharing a bed during thunderstorms. Despite their exhaustion, both felt a new energy humming between them. A shared purpose. A united front. "Think I'll ever be able to do what you did?" Nia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stand up to them like that?" "You already are," Naomi replied, "just by not letting them break you. By being here, learning, getting back up." She paused. "We're stronger together, you know." "Yeah," Nia said, squeezing her hand again. "I know." The community gym buzzed with nervous energy. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the blue competition mats where competitors warmed up. Naomi adjusted her white GI, double-checking the knot on her belt, while Nia sat on the bleachers nearby, clutching their grandmother's worn leather bag. "Remember what we practiced," Naomi muttered to herself, rolling her shoulders. The registration table had given her questioning looks when she signed up. They weren't used to seeing many black girls in these local tournaments. Her first opponent was a stocky boy from the next county. As they bowed to start the match, she caught his smirk. He probably thought this would be easy. The referee's hand chopped down, and the boy lunged forward with overconfident speed. Naomi sidestepped smoothly, just like dodging Chase's attacks in the barn. When he grabbed for her GI, she used his momentum to sweep his legs. He hit the mat with a surprised grunt. Before he could recover, she trapped his arm in a textbook armbar. He tapped out in seconds. "Winner, Carter," the referee announced. A few scattered claps echoed through the gym. Naomi caught Nia's proud grin from the bleachers. Her second match drew more attention. This opponent was a tall girl with competition patches covering her GI. She was technically skilled, but Naomi had learned her techniques defending against real attacks. When the girl attempted a throw, Naomi countered with the same move she'd used on Kyle, sending her opponent flying. The crowd gasped. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. Where did she train? Match after match, Naomi's precision and power drew more spectators. Her techniques weren't flashy. They were efficient, practiced, perfect. A boy tried to muscle his way through her defense. She choked him out in 30 seconds. An experienced competitor attempted to tire her with complex moves. Naomi waited patiently, then struck like a snake when she saw an opening. Between matches, she noticed a man with a camera from the local paper taking photos. Let them see, she thought. Let everyone see. The semifinals paired her against a boy she recognized from a neighboring school. He'd been at last year's county fair, one of the ones who'd accidentally knocked over their produce stand. His eyes widened when she stepped onto the mat. "Begin!" called the referee. The boy circled cautiously, having watched her earlier matches. Naomi kept her breathing steady, centered like the willow tree she'd described to Nia. When he finally attacked, she was ready. She caught his GI, dropped her weight, and executed a perfect hip throw that sent him soaring. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs. Naomi followed him down, securing a cross-body hold that made him struggle like a fish on land. She could have submitted him quickly, but she held the position, letting him wear himself out, letting him feel powerless, just for a moment. When he finally tapped, his face was red with exhaustion and shame. The finals brought her face to face with a state champion from Atlanta. He had a black belt and a collection of medals. The crowd had grown significantly, and she heard murmurs about the farm girl who'd fought her way to the finals. This match was different. Her opponent was skilled, patient, and experienced. They exchanged techniques like a complex dance, each looking for openings. Sweat dripped down Naomi's back as she defended against his attacks. But she'd trained for this, not in a fancy dojo, but in a broken-down barn with determination as her only teacher. When the champion shot in for a takedown, Naomi sprawled perfectly. As he tried to recover, she caught him in a guillotine choke. The gym went silent except for the sound of their heavy breathing. The champion struggled, tried to escape, but Naomi's grip was iron. Finally, his hand slapped the mat. The referee raised her hand. Winner and tournament champion, Naomi Carter. The gym erupted in applause. Even those who had watched suspiciously at first couldn't deny her skill. A small crowd gathered as the organizers presented her with a modest trophy. Nothing fancy, just a simple cup with a martial artist on top. But it represented something bigger. Through the crowd, Naomi spotted Nia standing and clapping, tears of joy streaming down her face. Their eyes met across the gym, sharing a moment of triumph that went beyond the tournament. This wasn't just about winning matches. This was about standing tall, about showing everyone what they were capable of. The local paper photographer asked her to pose with the trophy. Naomi held it high, her face serious, but proud. She could already imagine the whispers spreading through town. Did you hear about that Carter girl? Did you see what she did at the tournament? Let them talk, she thought. Let them see that the days of pushing the Carter family around were over. The midnight air hung heavy and still. Naomi jolted awake to the acrid smell of smoke. Through her window, an orange glow flickered against the trees. Her heart stopped. "Fire!" she screamed, already running barefoot down the hall. "Grandma! Nia! The barn's burning!" The old wooden barn was already consumed in flames when they burst outside. The heat hit them like a wall, and the crack and roar of burning timber filled the air. Inside, their horses whinnied in terror. Chickens clucked frantically in their coop nearby. "The animals!" Nia cried, starting forward. Naomi grabbed her arm. "I'll get them." "You and Grandma get the hose." Naomi pulled her shirt over her nose and ran toward the inferno. The barn door was hot to the touch. She kicked it open, ducking under a shower of sparks. Smoke stung her eyes as she squinted through the haze. The horses stamped and reared in their stalls, wild with fear. "Easy, easy," she called, trying to keep her voice steady as she reached for Shadow's halter. The big mare's eyes rolled white, but she knew Naomi's touch. Together they moved toward the door, the horse's powerful body trembling. Behind a stack of hay bales, something moved. Naomi glimpsed Ethan crouched in the shadows, phone raised to film the destruction. Their eyes met through the smoke. His face went pale. "What are you—" she started, but a beam cracked overhead. "Get out! Now!" Ethan scrambled past her into the night. Naomi turned back for the second horse. The heat was unbearable now, and breathing was like swallowing glass. She reached Lightning's stall just as Nia appeared in the doorway. "Help me!" Naomi shouted. Together they guided the panicked horse outside. Grandma Rose had the hose going, but the thin stream seemed pitiful against the towering flames. The old wood was like tinder after months of drought. In the distance, sirens wailed. Through tears of smoke and despair, Naomi saw Travis Miller's truck speeding away down the dirt road. Near where it had been parked, grass smoldered where something had been thrown. The fire trucks arrived too late to save the barn. They could only contain the blaze, keep it from spreading to the fields. Naomi and Nia worked frantically to herd their chickens to safety, while their grandmother spoke with the firefighters. Dawn was breaking when Sheriff Matthews pulled up, his cruiser kicking up dust. He barely glanced at the smoking ruins before turning to Grandma Rose. "Mighty convenient timing," he drawled, "right after all them complaints about code violations. Insurance would cover a new barn, wouldn't it? Are you accusing us of something?" Grandma Rose's voice was steel. "Just noting the facts, ma'am. Farm's been struggling. Bit of insurance money might help with that." He pulled out a notebook. "We'll need to investigate this as potential arson." "Arson?" Naomi stepped forward, fists clenched. "We saw Travis Miller's truck." "That true?" The sheriff cut her off. "Because I just spoke to Travis. Says he was home all night. Funny thing about accusations without proof. What about proof that they attacked us first?" Nia's voice shook. "What about—" "Young lady, I'd be careful about throwing around more accusations, especially given your sister's recent, violent behavior." He tipped his hat. "We'll be in touch." As he drove away, Naomi noticed movement in the trees. Ethan stood half-hidden, still clutching his phone. When she took a step toward him, he vanished into the shadows. The sun climbed higher, revealing the full extent of the destruction. The barn was a blackened skeleton. Their stored hay was ash. Tools passed down through generations were warped and ruined. The horses huddled under a tree, still spooked. Naomi walked slowly through the debris, each step crushing charred wood. Her tournament trophy, which she'd proudly displayed on a shelf in the barn, lay melted and twisted in the ruins. All around her, generations of Carter's sweat and sacrifice had been reduced to smoking rubble. Her knees gave out. She sank into the ashes, not caring that they stained her clothes. Her shoulders shook with rage and grief. "They think this will break us," she whispered, touching the scorched earth. The words tasted like smoke and fury. Behind her, she heard Nia crying softly, while Grandma Rose murmured prayers. The morning breeze carried the stench of burnt dreams across their land. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd built, had gone up in flames because they'd dared to fight back. The ashes were still warm under Naomi's hands. In the distance, Travis Miller's truck had reappeared on the road. He was driving slowly now, watching, probably enjoying their pain, probably thinking they'd finally learned their lesson. The morning after the fire, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her untouched breakfast. Smoke still hung in the air, seeping through the windows and reminding them of everything they'd lost. Her muscles ached from the night's efforts, and her throat felt raw from breathing in the burning barn. Nia moved quietly around the kitchen, making tea with trembling hands. The sisters hadn't slept, spending the night watching for any sign the smoldering remains might reignite. Their clothes still carried the acrid smell of destruction. "What's the point?" Naomi finally spoke, her voice hollow. "Every time we stand up, they hit us harder. The barn, the animals, our whole life." She pushed her plate away, appetite gone. "Maybe we should sell. Move somewhere else. Start over." The words felt like acid in her mouth, but the weight of defeat pressed down on her shoulders. The morning light streaming through the window seemed to mock their loss, illuminating the exhaustion on their faces. Grandma Rose, who had been silently washing dishes, turned off the tap. The sound of her old wooden chair scraping across the floor made both sisters look up. She sat down across from Naomi, her weathered hands folded on the table. "Your daddy was 6 years old," she began, her voice steady, "when they burned our first barn. Back then, they didn't even bother hiding it. Did it in broad daylight, laughing. Your grandfather wanted to leave too." Naomi lifted her head, surprised. She'd never heard this story before. "But you know what I told him?" Grandma Rose's eyes held a fierce light. "I said, 'Marcus Carter, this land remembers who bleeds for it. We rebuilt that barn with our own hands. Every nail we drove was an act of defiance.'" She reached across the table and gripped Naomi's wrist. Her touch was warm and strong, despite her age. "They want you to quit, child. That's why they're pushing so hard. Don't give them the satisfaction." "But, Grandma," Nia spoke up from the counter, "they have everything on their side. The sheriff, the bank, the whole town. They had more back then," Grandma Rose cut in. "But we had something they didn't. Something they still don't understand." She squeezed Naomi's wrist. "We had roots deeper than their hate." Naomi closed her eyes, feeling the truth of those words sink into her bones. The land beneath their feet had been worked by Carter hands for generations. Every harvest, every season, every struggle had made it more than just property. It was their heritage. "Look at me," Grandma Rose commanded. Naomi opened her eyes to meet her grandmother's stern gaze. "You think you're tired? You think this is hard? Girl, I've watched this family survive worse. Your daddy used to say, 'They can burn our barn, but they can't burn our spirit.'" The mention of their father stirred something in Naomi's chest. She remembered him teaching her to ride, his gentle hands guiding her on Shadow's back, the same horse she'd rescued from the flames last night. "The question isn't whether we can keep fighting," Grandma Rose continued, her voice growing stronger. "The question is, what kind of story do you want to tell your children? That we ran when things got hard? Or that we stood our ground and showed them what Carter strength really means?" Outside, the morning breeze carried the lingering scent of smoke across their fields. But mixed with it was the smell of earth, of growing things, of life that persisted despite everything. Naomi pushed back her chair and walked to the window. The barn's blackened skeleton stood against the sky, a stark reminder of their enemies' hatred. But around it, their land stretched out, green and defiant. The crops they'd planted still reached for the sun. The chickens they'd saved pecked in the yard. Even in destruction, life continued. "They think burning our barn will make us disappear," Grandma Rose said behind her. "Prove them wrong." Naomi walked outside, her bare feet touching the dew-damp grass. She made her way to the barn's remains, where ash still coated everything like dirty snow. Kneeling, she pressed her hands into the charred soil. It was still warm, still alive beneath the surface. "Not yet," she muttered, fingers curling into the earth. The words came out stronger than she expected, carrying the weight of generations of Carters who had refused to be driven from their land. "Not yet. Nia stood in their shared bedroom, staring at Ethan's cracked smartphone she'd retrieved from behind the barn hay bales. She'd spotted it that morning while helping clean up, half buried in straw, where he'd dropped it during Naomi's ambush. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life, no password required. Typical Ethan carelessness. "Naomi," she called softly. "Come look at this." Her sister appeared in the doorway, still brushing dirt from her hands. The morning's despair had hardened into something else. Something stronger, after Grandma Rose's words. Naomi crossed the room, her footsteps heavy on the old wooden floor. "What is it?" "Ethan's phone. From when—" Nia swallowed hard. "From when you fought them." They sat together on Nia's bed, the worn quilt crinkling beneath them. The gallery app opened to reveal dozens of videos, organized by date. Nia's stomach churned as she recognized the thumbnail of the first one, her own terrified face from days ago. "Should we?" She hesitated, finger hovering over the play button. Naomi's jaw tightened. "We need to see everything they recorded." The first video started playing, and Nia flinched at the sound of her own screams mixing with their laughter. Chase's face loomed large in the frame as he grabbed her shirt, his words clear and cruel. "Know your place, farm trash." The racial slurs that followed made both sisters wince. "Stop," Naomi whispered after 30 seconds. I can't watch them hurt you again." But Nia forced herself to continue scrolling, her breath catching as she noticed a video from last night. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. When she pressed play, the night scene filled the screen, illuminated by flashlight beams. Travis's face appeared, grinning as he waved a gas can. "Watch this," his voice slurred slightly. "Gonna teach those Carter bitches what happens when they don't stay down." The camera followed him as he splashed accelerant against the barn wall, the liquid gleaming in the darkness. "Hurry up," Chase's voice came from off-screen. "Before someone sees." The flame of Travis's lighter flared bright, and then whoosh, orange fire raced up the wooden walls. The video captured their laughter, their high-fives, their casual cruelty as they watched the flames spread. "Oh my God," Nia breathed. Her hand covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We have proof. Real proof." Naomi grabbed the phone, rewinding both videos to watch key moments again. Her hands shook with rage, but her voice was steady. "They filmed everything. Their faces, their voices, the lighter, the gas can, even their stupid jokes about it. The sheriff can't ignore this," Nia said. "He'll have to—" "No." Naomi's eyes gleamed with sudden purpose. "The sheriff's in their pocket? But the internet? That's something they can't control." She pulled out her own phone and started typing rapidly. "I'm creating a new account. Anonymous. Then we upload both videos, the assault and the arson." Nia watched her sister work, conflict playing across her face. "What if they come after us worse than before?" "They already burned down our barn," Naomi said grimly. "But this time, they gave us the weapon to fight back. Their own arrogance trapped them." The upload screen appeared. 2 videos, ready to share with the world. Naomi's finger hovered over the button, trembling slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of what this would unleash. "Do it," Nia whispered, gripping her sister's free hand. "Show everyone who they really are." Naomi took a deep breath and pressed share. The progress bar began to fill. 10%, 25%, 50%. The sisters sat in tense silence, watching the numbers climb. 75%, 90%, 100%. The videos were live. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when the first news van pulled up to the Carter farm. Naomi watched from the kitchen window, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips, as a reporter and cameraman stepped carefully around the muddy driveway. Her phone buzzed constantly. Thousands of notifications from the videos that had spread like wildfire overnight. "They're here already," Nia said softly, joining her sister at the window. Dark circles under her eyes revealed her sleepless nights spent monitoring the growing online storm. 100,000 shares, Naomi muttered, glancing at her phone again. And that's just on the first platform. More vehicles appeared on their rural road. Cars with news station logos, vans packed with people holding signs, trucks driven by neighbors who had never before dared to show support. The quiet farm had become the eye of a sudden hurricane of attention. Mrs. Delgado's ancient pickup truck rattled up the drive, its bed loaded with casseroles and paper bags full of groceries. Behind her came the Washingtons from 3 farms over, carrying tools and building supplies. Then the Rodriguezes with more food, and the Johnsons with lumber for the barn. Grandma Rose opened the screen door, her voice carrying clear across the yard. "Well, don't just stand there gawking. If you're here to help, there's work to be done." The morning unfolded in a blur of activity. Naomi moved between interviews, telling their story again and again while neighbors worked around them, clearing debris and starting repairs on the barn. Her phone kept buzzing. Calls from national news networks, messages from activist groups offering support, and notifications of online fundraisers springing up in their name. "The videos have over 1 million views now," a young reporter from Atlanta told her, holding up his tablet. "People are demanding action from local authorities. What do you think about the response?" Before Naomi could answer, a commotion erupted at the edge of their property. Sheriff Matthews's patrol car had arrived, and he looked distinctly uncomfortable facing the wall of cameras suddenly turned his way. "Care to comment on why no arrests have been made?" someone shouted. "Despite clear video evidence of hate crimes?" The sheriff tugged at his collar, sweat visible on his forehead despite the cool morning. "We're conducting a thorough investigation." "Into which crime?" another voice called out. "The assault or the arson? Because we've all seen both videos now." Naomi watched from the porch as the sheriff retreated to his car, followed by a barrage of questions and cameras. It felt surreal, like watching justice finally catch up, one uncomfortable question at a time. Inside, Nia sat at their kitchen table with a representative from the Southern Poverty Law Center, sharing documentation of years of harassment. Their grandmother moved between clusters of neighbors, directing repair efforts and accepting covered dishes with graceful thanks. By afternoon, the crowd had grown larger. Local black church groups arrived with lunch for everyone. White families who had previously stayed silent now stood openly alongside them, hammers and saws in hand. The weight of fear that had pressed down on the Carter farm for generations seemed to lift slightly, broken by the simple act of truth exposed. A young woman from CNN requested one final interview as the sun began to set. The golden light caught the fresh sawdust in the air around the barn frame, where the community's work had already begun to erase the fire's destruction. "Your video post has sparked a national conversation," the reporter said, adjusting her microphone. "About racism, about justice, about rural communities. What do you hope comes from all this attention?" Naomi looked around slowly, at her sister standing tall despite her healing bruises, at their grandmother directing volunteers with fierce pride, at neighbors finally united in purpose. She thought about Chase's broken wrist, about Travis's smirking face in the firelight, about years of slurs and threats and damaged property. She turned back to the reporter, her voice steady and clear. "Justice. Could you elaborate on that?" "Justice isn't just about punishment," Naomi continued. "It's about change, real change. So no other family has to teach their children to endure hatred. So no other sister has to learn to fight just to protect her own." She gestured to the bustling farm around them. "Look at all these people working together now. That's what our community should have been all along. That's what justice looks like." The reporter nodded, visibly moved. Behind her, another truck pulled up, loaded with donated supplies. More hands reaching out to help, more voices refusing to stay silent. Naomi felt Nia's arm slip around her waist, their grandmother's weathered hand on her shoulder. Together they faced the cameras, the growing crowd, the future rushing toward them like a cleansing storm. The truth was out now, carried on millions of shares and clicks and voices saying, "Enough." And it all started with a dropped phone in the hay. The county courthouse buzzed like an angry hive. Every wooden bench creaked under the weight of spectators, with more people standing shoulder to shoulder along the walls. The air felt thick with tension, made worse by the late summer heat seeping through the tall windows. Naomi sat between Nia and Grandma Rose in the front row, her back straight as steel. Across the aisle, Mr. Whitmore lounged in his expensive suit, whispering to his lawyer while shooting smug glances their way. Chase sat behind him, his wrist still in a cast, trying to match his father's confidence, but failing to hide his nervous sweat. The judge's gavel cracked through the murmurs. "Order in the court. Mr. Whitmore, you may address your accusations." Mr. Whitmore rose slowly, buttoning his jacket with manicured fingers. "Your Honor, this is nothing but a calculated attack on my family's reputation. These people," he gestured dismissively toward the Carters, "have fabricated evidence to stir up trouble. They damaged their own property for attention. The videos are clearly doctored." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others scowled in disbelief. "The Carter girl assaulted my son unprovoked," Mr. Whitmore continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "And now they've manipulated social media to paint themselves as victims. It's a shameful attempt to extract money from hardworking, respected members of this community." The judge turned to Naomi. "Miss Carter, you may respond to these allegations." Naomi stood slowly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. The courthouse fell silent. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, but she focused only on Mr. Whitmore's smirking face. "For generations, my family has worked our land honestly," she began, her voice clear and strong. "We've endured broken fences, poisoned wells, and midnight raids on our crops. We've cleaned racist graffiti off our barn doors more times than I can count." She pointed at Chase. "His son and his friends cornered my sister, beat her, filmed it for fun. When I fought back, they tried to burn us out." Mr. Whitmore's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! These are unsubstantiated claims." "I have the scars to prove it," Nia spoke up suddenly, her quiet voice carrying through the hall. She stood beside her sister. "And we have witnesses, neighbors who were too afraid to speak up before, because of what the Whitmores might do to them." More murmurs filled the room. Mrs. Delgado stood up from her seat. Then Mr. Washington. The Rodriguezes. One by one, farmers and townspeople rose, showing their support. Mr. Whitmore's confident smile flickered. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The videos are fake. My boy Ethan here can testify." "Ethan," Naomi's voice cut through the chaos. "Tell the truth. For once in your life, do the right thing." All eyes turned to Ethan Cross, hunched in his seat near the back. His face had gone pale, hands shaking as he gripped his knees. I. He looked at Chase, then at his own shoes. "The videos are real." His voice cracked. "I filmed them, both of them. The beating and the fire. Travis lit it. Chase told him to. Mr. Whitmore said he'd make sure we didn't get in trouble." The courthouse exploded in shocked voices. Mr. Whitmore's face turned purple with rage. "You little—" "Order!" The judge's gavel crashed down repeatedly. "Order in this court!" Chase leaped up, his good hand balled into a fist. "You lying piece of—" He lunged toward Nia, face twisted with hatred. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Naomi stepped in front of her sister, her body moving with fluid precision. As Chase's wild punch sailed past her head, she gripped his arm, pivoted her hip, and used his own momentum to send him flying. He crashed into the wooden railing with a spectacular thud, landing spread-eagled on the courthouse floor. The hall erupted. Deputies rushed forward, but they weren't needed. Chase lay groaning, his father's expensive suit collecting dust from the floor. Mr. Whitmore stood frozen, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. People were on their feet, some cheering, others shouting. The judge's gavel was lost in the chaos. Mrs. Delgado embraced a weeping Nia. Grandma Rose stood tall, tears streaming down her proud face. Through it all, Naomi remained standing, calm as stone, looking down at Chase. "That's the last time you'll ever try to hurt my sister." The deputies helped Chase up, his face burning with humiliation. His father couldn't even look at him, already huddled with his lawyer as years of corruption began to unravel. The cheers grew louder. Someone started clapping, and the sound spread like thunder through the courthouse. The room divided itself, the Whitmores and their remaining supporters shrinking against one wall, while the rest of the community surrounded the Carters with waves of support and vindication. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh lumber and wet paint across the Carter farm. Where charred ruins had stood just weeks ago, a new barn rose proudly against the Georgia sky. Its red walls gleamed in the afternoon sun, twice the size of the old structure, built with donations and the hands of neighbors who had finally found their courage. Naomi watched from the porch as another delivery truck rumbled up their driveway. Ever since the courthouse showdown, help had poured in from across the country. First came the lawyers, then the journalists, and finally the flood of support from people touched by their story. "Look what just came in," Nia called out, waving a newspaper. The headline read, "Whitmore Empire Crumbles. Years of Corruption Exposed." Below it, smaller headlines detailed the charges: assault, arson, witness intimidation, fraudulent land deals stretching back decades. Grandma Rose settled into her rocking chair, smoothing her apron. Chase and his friends are looking at juvenile detention. Their daddies might see real prison time. She shook her head slowly. The Lord works in mysterious ways. The investigation had uncovered everything: missing permits, buried environmental violations, bribes paid to look the other way, while black farmers were harassed off their land. Mr. Whitmore's smug smile had finally cracked when the FBI arrived with boxes of evidence. "Mrs. Rodriguez says they're seizing the Whitmore properties," Nia said, settling beside her sister on the porch steps. "All that stolen land, going back to the families they forced out." Naomi nodded, remembering faces from the courthouse, neighbors who had lost everything to the Whitmores' greed. Now they were returning, justice in hand at last. The community was healing, rebuilding itself alongside the Carters' barn. Inside the new structure, modern equipment hummed. A shiny tractor, donated by a farming collective, stood ready for the spring planting. The chicken coop had doubled in size, and solar panels gleamed on the roof. Even the farmhouse had gotten a fresh coat of paint, its worn boards replaced, its foundation strengthened. "Never thought I'd see the day," Grandma Rose mused, her eyes distant. "When your daddy was a boy, we couldn't even get a loan to fix the roof. Now look at us." She gestured to the transformed farm. "All because you girls refused to back down." Nia squeezed her sister's hand. The bruises had faded, but the memories remained, both the painful ones and the triumphant. The video of Chase's courthouse takedown had gone viral, making Naomi a symbol of resistance. But it was Nia's quiet strength, speaking truth to power, that had truly turned the tide. As evening approached, they walked the property together. The autumn sun painted everything in gold, from the new fence posts to the freshly tilled fields. Where the old barn had burned, rich soil waited for spring. Life would grow here again, stronger than before. "Remember what you told me that night?" Nia asked, kneeling to touch the earth. "After they hurt me? You said they'd pay." Naomi crouched beside her sister. "Never thought it would happen like this. I was ready to fight with my fists forever." "Sometimes justice needs both," Grandma Rose said, joining them. "The strength to stand up and the patience to stand firm." She pulled a packet of seeds from her pocket. Their heritage vegetables, saved through generations of Carter women. Tomorrow, they would plant these seeds in the fertile soil, continuing a tradition older than the hatred they'd faced. But tonight, they simply stood together, watching the sun paint the sky in fierce colors above their reborn land. The lights of distant farms twinkled on, including homes where black families were returning, reclaiming land stolen decades ago. The community was transforming, like a forest after fire, growing back stronger and more diverse than before. In the new barn, the evening crew, local teenagers earning fair wages, finished their work. Their laughter drifted across the property, a sound that would have been unimaginable just months ago. The Carter farm had become a symbol of change, a beacon of hope. "Daddy would be proud," Naomi whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The gentle breeze seemed to agree, rustling through the remaining autumn leaves like a parent's loving sigh. As the last rays of sun painted the horizon, Grandma Rose gathered her granddaughters close. They stood at the edge of their fields, where the earth waited for tomorrow's planting. The rich Georgia soil, dark and fertile, held promises of new beginnings. Dawn would bring another day of work, of healing, of growth. Seeds would sink into welcoming earth, and the cycle would begin again. But this time, the Carter farm would flourish without fear, without the shadow of hatred darkening its borders. Naomi picked up a handful of soil, letting it sift through her fingers. The same land that had absorbed their tears now promised a future bright with possibility. From the ashes of destruction, they had forged something unbreakable. Not just a farm, but a legacy of courage. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.